do, guys? It's the Connection Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Connection Podcast, where in just under an hour, we are going to dive into the Bible and come full circle with God and His Word.
That was good, Matt.
That was fantastic.
That was a little too fast.
I'm going to have to figure out where to cut. I'm going to leave all that in. No,
all of it?
No, I'm not going to leave all of
it.
All right. Hey, if you guys are listening for the first time, welcome, and thank you for listening. We appreciate it. If you guys are listening for the umpteenth time, where'd that word come from?
I'm honestly, this is the first time I heard it.
Yeah. I've never heard that.
Must be a Midwest thing.
You've been watching too much Bema podcast. Hearing too much Bema
Hey,
podcast.
shout out to the Bema podcast because it's fantastic. Y'all should go listen to it right now.
Well, and then listen to us.
And yeah. Well, listen to us first, but then go listen to that
and
afterwards.
get more context.
Honestly, though. No, those guys are great. Marty Solomon and Brent Billings. Go listen to them. It'll change your life.
Hopefully we could go cycling with y'all soon.
Yeah.
Marty.
Hey, yeah.
That's my boy.
Track through. Oh, we are just having too much fun at the beginning of this episode. But hey, if you guys are listening and have been listening, we thank you for the support. Thank you guys for liking and tagging and subscribing and hitting that notification bell and all that kind of good stuff. So
Yeah.
we are in a series. We're going to jump in. We're in a series called The Sixth Man, where we are discovering what it looks like for preparation, responsibility, and legacy for people in the Bible, and what it looks like to be a successor and get yourself out of the way and all these different things. So hopefully you guys have listened to the overview episode and the introduction to understand where we're all coming from with this, or where we're coming from with all of this. So if you haven't, go back, listen to that, and then come back to this one. Because today we are going to be talking about Elijah and Elisha. Same person? No. Two different people, very similar names.
Elijah.
With the J?
Elisha.
With the J. J versus S.
Elias y Eliseo.
Hey, that's a good segue into the next episode, too. Jesus and the Holy... No, sorry. That's Jesus and John the Baptist. I was thinking. Never mind.
They both start with J.
They do.
JJ's.
JJ. Which we'll get into the next one. So, but today, Elijah and Elisha. Let's jump in. 1 Kings 19:19-21 says this. So Elijah went from there, and it found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye," he said, "and then I will come with you." "Go back," Elijah replied. "What have I done to you?" So Elijah left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and give it to the people, and they ate. Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his servant. So stick around to the end of the episode, because we're actually going to talk about this a little bit more and how it relates to the call of Jesus and his disciples and the very, very similar process with all of this. So let's jump into Elijah first. And in our typical fashion for this series, we're going to start with his preparation. It's interesting because we have no backstory to Elijah. He just kind of appears in 1 Kings and prophesies that there's going to be a drought for, 3 years?
Yeah.
3 years?
This is a side tangent. My bad. It's just crazy how the Bible be doing that, like movies, like out of nowhere. Like, you know how a movie starts out of nowhere, you'll be like
450 BC.
Yeah, 450 BC, and then you just see Elijah's hand right there, all wrinkly and dirty and stuff, and then like he just be walking, bro, and then you just hear him start speaking Arabic. I mean, not Arabic, whatever they speak, Hebrew. Yeah, my bad.
No, but that's how this is. We jump in, and here's Elijah, this crazy dramatic prophet, and he's like, drought for 3 years. And we're just like, hold up, where'd he come from?
Who are you?
And so this was challenging to figure out what his preparation was, because we have no idea. It's not in the Bible. We don't know anything about him up to this point. But what we can infer, because Elijah was he's considered the most dramatic prophet. He's one of the greatest prophets of all time. He appears later with Jesus and Moses at the Transfiguration on the mountain. So he's a big time guy. He has a lot of a stake and
clout.
A lot of clout. Yeah, that's a good word. I like that. He has a lot of clout in this story. So I guess what we can infer from all this is that developing a relationship with God first produces greater fruit in your life.
Yeah.
Because had Elijah not been spending time with God and following the call and obeying God and doing what he was supposed to be doing, like we've talked about before, Elijah would not have done these crazy miracles that he did, right?
Yeah. And note that being a prophet basically means hearing God's voice. And how can you hear someone's voice if you're not in a relationship with them? So that's good, Noah. I like it.
Yeah.
My breast stink.
Nah, dude. Just grab the mic.
I got some mints and gum over there. If you want some, you can go grab some.
Starbucks mints, bro.
No, they ain't Starbucks mints. A quick little analogy that goes along with this, right? Because in order to produce fruit, if we think about like a fruit tree, tree's not started as a tree, it starts as a seed, right? It grows underground, it sprouts, it develops, and the last thing it does is bear fruit, right? So and we always want to get to that process of bearing fruit, but it's like, as we've learned, there's so much preparation and process that we have to go through.
Gotta dig out the dirt.
Yeah, go back to episode 1 for that.
First episode, but I remember listening to that. I was working.
Yeah, shout out to our very first podcast episode. How far we've come since. Look at that. Look at us making videos and doing all like we got 4 of it. This is crazy, man. Thank God. So, but again, just be underground, be hidden, be prepared, because that's where that fruit will come from. Yeah. Otherwise, you can't bear fruit at all. So we understand this with Elijah, that if you guys go through and read 1 Kings, you'll understand why we say he's a crazy prophet, because he was. Not in like a insane, but just it was insane what he did.
Is this on Elisha or Elijah?
Elijah.
Oh, Elijah.
Yeah. Yeah, the first guy, number 1. So anything else on that, guys, on preparation? Again, we don't know much, but nah?
I think you just hit it right on the point. Like you could tell he had a relationship with God by
yeah. And Jesus said too, like, by their fruit you will recognize them as my disciples, right? So we see that with Elijah and many other people throughout the Bible. So, all right, then let's move on. Number 2, responsibility for Elijah was that God still has work for us to do, even when we feel fear, and when we feel like a failure, or when we feel like we're alone. In the midst of all that, God actually says you're not alone and you still have work to do. So, keep pushing, keep going. I think with this, it's really that, like, when you feel those kinds of things the most, when you do feel afraid about stepping into something new or doing something God has maybe planted in your heart to do, like, that's actually a sign that you need to lean in more and depend on God more. God's not putting things in your heart so that you can do it. He's putting those things in your heart so that you can do it with him, and that so he can get glory from your life and from the fruit that you're producing. So with Elijah, where we see this happening, one of the, I guess, more well-known stories from Elijah is that he goes up to Mount Carmel, challenges all of the 850 false prophets from King Ahab and Jezebel. And he's like, hey, y'all come up, we'll do a trial by fire, and whoever's God answers by fire is a real God. Long story short, they do this crazy,
surprise,
like this crazy thing they go through. Again, go read it for yourself because it's insane. God answers by fire, burns it up, and Elijah kills all 850 false prophets. But then thereafter, he gets this death threat from Jezebel, and he runs away. He flees to Horeb. He's scared, and it's like, how is it that in our lives we go through the same thing where we see something great happen with God? I mean, now's a perfect example, right? We go through, we have faith, and we're strong, and all of a sudden something happens, and we just like run away in fear. And we're just like, what do we do?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I'm talking so much on this.
No, you're fine, bro. Keep it up.
Yeah, so God goes in, or Elijah flees, God comes to him. We have an episode where we talked about, the voice of God called "Is That You, Lord?" Go listen to that one too. Where
I don't know why "Is That You, Lord" always reminds me of like a VeggieTale episode, because they name it some stuff like that, Yeah. "Is That You, Lord?" and they have like the. Anyways, I'm so sorry.
You're good. Hey, shout out to VeggieTales.
Yes,
VeggieTales are
Got
great.
Larry in the flesh.
And who is it? Bob the Tomato?
Bob the Tomato.
Bob the Tomato, Larry boy.
What was it you said, Matt? If I'm Larry, who does that make
Larry,
you? It's easy.
That makes you. And I was like, dang. It's true.
That's awesome. So, again, when God will still have work for us to do, or God still has a calling for us to go through when we feel like we're afraid and we can at least do it. Where's that man going? What you doing? Oh, he's getting some like tissue or something? All right. Matt has left the picture. He'll be back. So, and that's going to pick up on the mic, I hope. Maybe we can just talk about this real quick. What do you guys think with like, how have you guys experienced when God says like, you need to keep going even though you feel like you can't? Because I'm tired of talking.
To be honest, it gets tough. Like when God tells you to keep going, even though you've already seen the fruits of your own labor and the fruits of God's labor, sometimes you kind of just sit back and we're all human. So at least for me, if you heard the Saul episode, I'm pretty sure Saul kind of felt the same way in a lot of ways and was like, yo, God, if you did it already, just do it again the same way you did it. But like, here's the thing is like, when we sing those songs like Do It Again or whatever, he is going to do it again. It's just that it's not going to be the exact same way. It just can't be. God never does the same thing like that. He can put situations that look similar and the situation might be the same, but the outcome of how you're going to get there is always going to be just a little bit different. And the reason for that is because it's growth with us. So I think this was kind of one of those situations where Elijah just witnessed God torching 800 people.
Yeah.
Like, just imagine someone with a flamethrower just firing up 850 people, and that's crazy. That's a savage move. And, that's a good title. Okay, anyways.
Savage move?
Savage Moves.
Ooh, that's a good series.
That's a good series. You heard it here first.
Let me write that one down real quick.
Anyways.
That's like Michael
Jackson's. Anyways. So for Elijah to like witness that and then for Jezebel to like call out a decree to like kill him, I'm thinking, okay, you just witnessed God killing 850 people in front of you. Now that this girl comes at you and says, I'm going to kill you, you're like, now you're scared? Telling you the power of a woman. It's crazy. No, it's just scary to him that it's like, how do you fear that, bro? You just witnessed this. Now some girl comes and tells you, I'm going to kill you. And now you're all scared?
Yeah.
But that's honestly us. We can witness God doing something super incredible in our lives, and then one little thing come and like try to knock us down, and we fall to the floor all dramatic. Oh God, I can't do any of this. Like, we turn into a soap opera. Yeah, I'm done, bro. Go ahead.
That was good, Izzy.
Sorry, bro.
I forgot the question.
Repeat the question. I know it, but just repeat.
No,
it
we're just talking about like why, like
of a time where
how have you like experienced when God tells us to keep going even though we don't feel like it or we're afraid or like we feel like we can't do it or like a failure or alone or whatever.
Yeah, I relate to Elijah a lot in this. And what Izzy was said or what he just said was so good. I think because if I'm gonna be real and transparent over here,
which is what we like on this podcast.
Yeah, I've seen my other brother. So okay, it's just crazy how his reason was because he saw how the other prophets were getting killed. So he basically took his focus off what God was doing in his life and put it onto what God wasn't doing on other people's lives. And that's a real place because my older brother, I've ever since I've grown up with him, like he's been like serving at church. He was serving at church and doing all this stuff. But him and I are not very close because there's a pretty big gap on age difference. But I started seeing his life not go too well in the last few years or whatever. And there's a lot of reasons. But besides that, I started thinking like, God, like, I've seen him as, a young boy, like how he served you and stuff. And like his life has just gone south in a sense. that brought fear to me because I'm like, I'm here doing what I feel like you're calling me to do. Like, how do I know that's not going to happen to me?
Right.
You know? And that's where Elijah was. He was like, I'm doing what you've been calling me to do, but Jezebel has killed so many prophets already. How do I know I'm not the next? You know? And it's because he had his focus on what God didn't do for the other people. And I'm not saying that God didn't come through for the other prophets, but God works in mysterious ways. We can never know why God does things for others and doesn't do things for others, you know? But it's a real place. And like, honestly, I've thought about that. I'm like, is this even worth it? Like, do I just go get a nice job and stop trying to do ministry? Because if I go get another job and try to do it within my own power, I know that at least I'll have an average life, you know? And I don't mean about belongings. I just mean like on what I do with my life, fulfillment, you know, purpose. And it's like, but you know, it is a scary place. And like, but honestly, I can't think about doing anything else. So, you know, it is scary, but God's good.
Even if you did decide to do something else, God would pick you up and, like Jonah, swallow you in a whale or something. So, you know, with this kind of stuff, because it is a very real place, like you're saying, Matt, because we do have times where we feel alone in what we're doing. We feel like God's kind of just focusing on everyone else, and we're just kind of left here to fend for ourselves. But that's actually not the case. It's never the case, because the Bible says that God will never leave you nor forsake you.
Yeah.
Right. You're right. He's always with us. He's always leading us and guiding us. It's just a matter of us. Like, we're not always going to feel it either. And I think that was an issue with Elijah, was that he was so used to seeing and experiencing God in physical ways that all of a sudden now it's like God's maybe not necessarily, like, he's not just going to like smite Jezebel, right, on this threat. He's going to let Elijah kind of sweat a little bit. Yeah. He's going to let him kind of go to that place where it's like, are you still going to, like, yeah, I've chosen you to do these great things, but are you still going to follow me and obey me when you don't feel me?
Yeah.
Right? And we understand this when, again, Elijah flees to Horeb and he experiences God in a physical way from the whisper, where God's like, I'm not in the wind, I'm not in the earthquake, I'm not in the fire, I'm right next to you, I'm intimate with you, I'm so close to you that I can whisper and you can hear me.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my goodness. That's so crazy because he's a prophet, right?
Right.
That's his biggest thing, that he hears from God. And I think Elijah was getting to a point where he thought the miracles was the biggest signs and wonders.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, the biggest miracles that you get to hear my voice.
Yeah. That I'm close to you.
Yeah. And God had to remind him, like, that's not the miracle. I could do all this stuff, this hocus pocus stuff. That's not the miracle. The miracle's me speaking to you.
Bro, it's just like the Israelites when they crossed the Red Sea, right? Like, it's the same thing, and just is a different form. Like, God literally parts the Red Sea, and the Israelites are like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, and they keep going through this thing where it's like, we want more, we want more, we want more. We want the same thing God has always done. That's what we want. And we say, God, I want to like hear your voice in a profound way that I heard it before, or I want to see these miraculous things happen as you have done them before. God's like, I'm right here.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need that when I'm this close to you.
Exactly. And it's like, honestly, like, God's not because I grew up in those churches where they're all about power and the Holy Spirit and stuff. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But when it gets to the point of like, you think it's all about that. And like, I really got an understanding of this when I was reading somewhere in Matthew about where Jesus feeds 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we all get caught up in the miracle, right?
There's
5,000 people that got fed off of 2 fish and 3 loaves or whatever. And God was like, no, that's not the miracle. Like, the miracle is like the heart transformation, what's happening, you know? And like, that was the miracle. It was a miracle, but it was symbolic to what was greater, you know? How people are getting fed through now, spiritually and stuff. And it's like, and it's just crazy because even a few days ago, I was rereading that passage, and it says before all that, it says that Jesus, before he even, he first saw the 5,000 coming, and it says that he felt compassion for them.
Yeah.
He's like, so all that, like, the miracles, the great signs, the healings and all that, that's great. But if like, you don't have compassion for the people, and we saw a little bit of Elijah, he kind of was taunting them.
Yeah.
And he got caught up. He got power. He got power hungry.
Power trip.
And because he's like, yeah, I got all this power. And it's like, but yeah, you're also killing people. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, God could do all that, but it's like he really wants to get to the point, and that's the hard issue of stuff.
Yeah. It's good. So real quick, just to give you guys some scripture for this, is 1 Kings 19. I'm just going to read kind of out of context, but verse 18, again, where God's basically reaffirming to Elijah that he's not alone, where God says, "Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal and whose mouths have not kissed him." This is after Elijah has said in verse 14, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant," right? Elijah is generalizing. The Israelites, all of them, have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too.
Yeah.
And that's where God comes in and says, yeah, no, there's still 7,000 people in Israel that have not bowed the knee to Baal.
Yeah.
Like, you're not alone in this, right? And again, when you feel like it's time to give up, when you feel like I can't do anymore, lean into God more in that moment. Like, whatever that means. Like, if you have to pray more, if you have to read more, if you have to just spend time in God's presence more, then lean into him further.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, number 3, legacy with Elijah. This is not about you, our the one we always go to, because everything that we're going through in life is not for us. So back in the same passage, 1 Kings 19 in verse 16, God says to Elijah, "Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat from Abel Maholah, to succeed you as prophet." Right? So God's like, it's time for the next person in line to step up, to get ready, to get prepared, and to become your successor.
I was gonna say real quick,
Go for it.
like what you're saying, like, you know how we asked the question, like, how do you feel like being like Elijah? Well, I'm just gonna say, if you're feeling like Elijah right now, in the sense of whatever you're going through, like with what Matt said and what Noah said, I think this is an important time for you guys to realize that you got a whole bench full of people ready to work. So,
Who are you talking to, Matt and I?
no, I'm talking to whoever's listening.
Oh, the people. I thought you were talking to Matt.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Because if you're feeling like, you guys are talking about like feeling like Elijah,
Yeah.
but like we also have to remember there's a whole sideline full of people
The whole army ready for you, basically.
that are ready to do it. So like, if you're in that spot where God is kind of mentioning to you, like, hey, it's time to get the boot, like, you're going to be out. Don't be afraid to like come in, which we're going to go into now, but like come in and essentially have your backup ready, which is Elisha, you know? Don't be afraid to lean on them, because that's, I know the Bible doesn't talk about it, but I'm sure just as any other humans in the world would find someone to confide in, you know?
Well, again, because it's not, God's not saying just Elisha. He's not saying just him. He's like, anoint all these other people too to help you out.
Yep.
Oscar, can you talk about that a little bit, about like leaning on other people for help and stuff? You got something to share on that? I'm putting you on the spot, but
Yeah. You got other people for help?
yeah.
I think for me, since I rededicated my life 6 years ago, I definitely had to have people in my life to lean on to as far as my walk with God, just because early on I pretty much, like, I had a foot in and foot out. Like, I didn't make up my mind. Like, I was a lukewarm Christian back then. And I needed help to people to pull me in, like, yo, like, you're in, we're not letting you go. And they were the ones pulling me in, like, you're going to go to church every Sunday, even if it's for a year and you got to sit there. If you don't want to be there, if you sit there for a year, that's going to change you.
Mm-hmm.
And it did. So thankfully, I had people on my sideline when I wasn't sure. Like, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm thinking I'm going to do my own thing, you know. But after experiencing what I went through, I don't know. Like, I'm going to try this out too. And thankfully, with God's help, with putting that sideline in my side of the court, you know, like, they're the ones that pulled me in to where I am now. And even now, like, the community that we have, I can definitely say that I've grown so much, like, this last year that I've known you guys in the community that we have, just because it has challenged me in a different way. And that's the biggest thing, I think, as far as like, fear. Sometimes we look at the big picture of, like, we have pastors here that you guys know are going to be pastors or worship pastor, you know? And I feel like sometimes we get so caught up in looking at the big picture that we, I think we talked about it I don't know if it's this one last episode, but enjoying or taking time to really enjoy those small wins, to really reflect on those instead of getting so caught up in the big picture that you're not acknowledging what God's doing in small steps as He's pulling you or pushing you towards what He's calling you to. So, but yeah, that's what I have to say though, as far as people and your sideline and all that.
And that's another thing that you're talking about too, is like it doesn't stop. Just because you get to that place doesn't mean you are all of a sudden exempt from having to have people help you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always room for people to help push you further, which is what we do. I mean, we just had a conversation before this episode started about just different things and how that's what community's for, is to help keep us accountable, keep pushing us, share struggles with each other. And that's what, I mean, a big thing, right? Because we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony, right? We share what God has brought us through, what Jesus did for us and how He changed us. And that's how we're able to help other people, right?
Yeah.
So that's Elijah with the J.
Bring my man Elisha.
Here we go.
The sixth man.
Elisha as the sixth man. So Elisha's preparation, right? Again, we're kind of like dumped into the story where Elisha's just out in the field. He's plowing with his 12 oxen, doing his thing. If you listen to the last episode, then you understand that this is exactly what David was doing too. He was out in the field tending his sheep. David was. And Elisha is out here doing the same kind of thing. He's being obedient to God, being planted where he's supposed to be.
Plowing the fields.
So again, it's very, very similar to what we said last time with David, is that, keep doing what God has told you to do. And in His timing, He will send for you.
They will send for you.
They will send for you. That's right.
He will send for you, but yeah.
He will tell those people to send for you. So it's as simple as that. Just keep doing what you're doing, and in time there will be a moment where God gives you and He says, "Hey, it's time."
What I love about Elisha is that he's that type of sixth man that he's ready to I've never I want to say I would never met someone, but there's a couple of basketball players, I can't really think of them off the top of my head, or people that are in sports that will come into a team to be the sixth man.
Yeah, for that purpose. And it's so funny because Elisha reminds me of that, because he was just he's I'm technically not going to be the leader, but I know I'm going to be preparing for it. I'll be there one day.
And he's I'll be there one day, but he's he knows that his time is coming for more preparation. For serious preparation. So when Elijah comes over and throws the cloak over him, he's oh, he got so excited. He's it's time. He goes and signs his contract. He's going to be spending time with Elijah.
Time for what though?
What do you mean? What do you mean time?
So
what time? I don't know what talking time.
It's 9:00 in the morning.
At what? What time is it?
Yeah, what time?
What time did he do what?
No, so you're saying that Elijah comes and throws his cloak over Elisha to do what?
He knows.
What does Elisha know?
He knows. He's oh my God. Elijah just threw his cloak over me.
Right. And we said it's time.
It's time.
It's time for Elisha to do what?
To burn everything. No. It's time for...
yes, but no.
It's time for Elijah to start his preparation on becoming the prophet that God is going to set up for after Elijah.
So what you're saying is that while Elisha is out in the field preparing, he then gets called to then go do more preparation.
Yeah. But see, in my opinion, there's two different preparations.
Yes.
There's the preparation in the dark room.
Yep.
And then there's the preparation where you're being squeezed and you're being crushed and you're actually now in the game.
Hey, thank you for such a great segue into the responsibility, because if you're being squeezed, that requires something, right? It requires sacrifice and it requires commitment. Right? You can't be called and then say, I'll be here on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. You got to show up, right? People who are called, I don't really watch basketball or know the context, but whoever is called to be a sixth man, right? That person that comes in, They have to practice as if they were going to be leading.
Yeah.
They have to practice as if they're already doing it. Because when the time comes, and it might be sooner than later, then they have to be ready. So Elijah calls Elisha and anoints him, puts his cloak on him and all that kind of stuff, and says, all right, come with me and just watch what I do, basically. And that's what Elisha does.
Well, I mean, another good example of a sixth man that reminds me of Elisha is, again, I know we're talking a lot about basketball in this series.
That's the point.
But anyways, if y'all know, okay, Kawhi Leonard, he, in my opinion, reminds me of Elisha in being a sixth man to where he becomes the man.
How?
Because
Ooh, that's a good one. I forgot he's so good of a all-star now that you forget
that he's even an all-star, yeah, or that he was a sixth man.
I forgot, bro.
But like when he was with the San Antonio Spurs, he was a sixth man. Like he played maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That's really nothing in basketball when you're playing with the 4 periods. Yeah. But like, so he played that. He got a ring. He was a part of the team. But like, he still was a sixth man to a certain extent. Like, they couldn't rest the team on his shoulders like they do now. Like the Toronto Raptors did with him. But here's the thing is that like his preparation, just like Elisha, was in the sense that he's doing it kind of in a dark room. So no one really knew Kawhi Leonard. Like his name wasn't popular. I mean, other than San Antonio, but like no one really knew Kawhi Leonard in the basketball world. They weren't talking about him. They were still talking about Tim Duncan, who was still there overshadowing him. The Elijah, I guess, of that time. And then he becomes the leader, but he becomes the leader kind of now in the open like Elisha is. But he's still in that preparation because all of the I guess miracles that you could say, or the good doings of like Tim Duncan and all the other people on his team with the San Antonio Spurs, they still, in my opinion, they still don't match up to that one corner 3 that he took. You know what I'm talking about? The corner 3 that he took. Yeah, against the Suns.
I hate the Spurs because of that,
Dude,
bro.
I don't know what they're talking about.
All right, let me tell you what. I was watching that game at my boy's
Oscar
house.
over here like, I don't know what they're talking
We're
about.
watching that game in my boy's house, and then Steve Nash. I remember Steve Nash hit a clutch 3 before that. I was like, all right, we kind of we're like in this still. And then out of nowhere, I think it was Ginobili.
Yeah, Ginobili.
Which is another great six man. He goes
team is
in.
full of six men.
He goes in and then he drives it in, and then Tim Duncan, out of all the places, he's in the 3-point. Yeah. I'm like, all right, Tim Duncan, he ain't gonna hit that because Ginobili just passes it to him, and then out of nowhere,
drained it.
He pulls up, and I see the ball. I'm like, yeah, it's Tim Duncan. He ain't hitting no 3.
But like the part that is incredible to me is, in my opinion, I loved that 3, and it was great, and it
wasn't against your team.
Well, yeah, but and it was great. You know, it was great, but it was memorable. But what about the 3 that Kawhi took recently to get to the finals? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Again, was it the Clippers?
Yeah.
When he took this crazy 3, and like he took the shot, he was falling over, he was smothered like blocking wise, and he made it. Like, but the funniest thing is that the ball, like when it went in, it kind of like bounced forward and then went this way and was like gonna fall out, but it like just fell right in. But like what I'm trying to say is, I know I'm talking about basketball, I'm happy about it, but like what I'm trying to say is like Kawhi Leonard had a preparation in the dark,
right,
when no one knew his name,
hidden
in San Antonio. And then when he became a starter at San Antonio, he still was, in a way, not really known.
Yeah. But
that was his second preparation to now who he is, with who he was with Toronto Raptors and with the Clippers. I mean, it's just it's incredible. Like, so when we as Christians look at our walk, you're gonna have maybe
you'll have your 3.
You'll have you'll take your 3.
Or more.
You're gonna have
a few 3s.
You're probably gonna have, in order to take the 3, you'll probably have 3 preparation seasons.
Yeah. 3.
Just
No,
saying.
we wrote down for this with Elisha is that responsibility requires sacrifice and commitment, which it does. We see that with when he burns his equipment, gave his food to the people, followed Elijah, follows Elijah all through until his death. But I think even like this is kind of like a bonus thing, but like on top of that, it's that prepared to go. Preparation leads to preparation. It just seems like that. It seems like you're preparing in one way, but God's going to then take you into another place where you're preparing for something else. And it's just like, be prepared to get prepared. It's such a strange concept, but I think what you guys are saying is that it's totally necessary, where it's like, there's a season where God calls you and he wants you to be with him, right? That's like kind of like a first call where it's like, hey, just be with me. What?
Just look like the dark there, man.
Matt Steve's just like, let me put my mask on real quick.
Virus season, baby.
I totally lost my train of thought on that. Basically, like there's a season where God calls you to be prepared, and then he's going to take you through more preparation underneath somebody to get you prepared even more.
So basically, you're never finished.
You're never finished. That's right. And that leads us to the next point, which is this is not about you with legacy. Because it never ends with you. And Elisha realized this because he did greater works than Elijah. Right before Elijah was taken up into heaven in that fiery chariot, Elisha was like, hey, like, I want your double portion. And Elijah's like, well, that's a lot you're asking, but you can do it.
Guts for Elisha to ask that.
Right. Like, knowing, we didn't talk about this yet, but like, Elisha had to know who Elijah was.
Yeah.
That's why he is so adamant and so quick to respond to his call, because he's like, oh, this is the guy.
I mean, let's be real, guys. If someone came and threw a cloak on you in the middle of Walmart, would you be like, oh, God's calling me? Or would you guys be like, who's ready to fight? Like,
like what is going on?
Who wants
right?
smoke?
I'll double the trouble, bro.
Double the trouble.
And it's so fascinating that like, we were talking about this before, but it's like that moment where Elisha is standing there, Elijah's gone. He's just like, what do I do now? Right? Now I am not the sixth man. Now I'm carrying
the man.
I am the man. I'm carrying all of this. And he's like, what do I do now? And so what does he do? He does exactly what he's seen Elijah do. I got my prop for this one.
Gotta start the dribble.
Hold up. Right? So he takes the towel that was folded up. Y'all can read this. Takes the towel that was folded up right before they had just done this. Elijah did this. And he smacks the water. He smacks the water and the water parts. Right? And the first thing that Elisha does is he grabs. Good call. He does the same thing. He's like, well, let's see if it works. And he smacks the water again and it does the same thing. And it's like God kind of telling him like, hey, like this is your time, right? It's almost like God gives him that signal where it's like, are you ready? Like you wanted that, and you better be ready for what you've asked to do.
Which is really crazy because Elisha was going through Elijah in a season and learning all the stuff that he was doing and like all the stuff he went through, because he went through it too.
Yeah.
And to ask, because it's kind of like the whole like Spider-Man, shout out Spidey, where he says, where he's like, when more power comes more responsibility. Yeah. So it's like sometimes we over here look at our preacher and be like, "Man, God, give me the double portion of Stephen Furtick." It's like, are you prepared to go double the trouble too, though? Because you don't see the stress on his life because of some situation. But like that means they're gonna ask for also double the trouble. And that's why Elijah was like, "Are you sure this is what you want?" And he's like, "It was guts. It was big guts." Because he's like, "You know what? Yeah, I'm ready for it." Like this, like he wasn't ignorant to that. He was like, he was willing to put up with more. But because he was willing to do it for the people.
Exactly. Because he knew it wasn't about him. He was like, I've seen what he can do, and I want to do the same thing. I want these people to know God's power and who he is. Mm-hmm. So really, how are we doing on time, Matt? Where are we at? 39? All right, we're fine. Few more minutes here, guys. Stick with us, because we're wrapping up. So Elijah, right? There's kind of a contrast here, but the same, right? They're two different people, but they're pretty much doing the exact same thing, just in different ways. And this is really God showing the people himself in two different ways. So Elijah is this kind of fiery confronter, right? He was all about the fire, like obviously with the prophets on the Mount Carmel and all that kind of stuff. The fiery confronter who exposed idolatry so people could freely worship God, right? He's basically setting the people free to do this. Elijah comes and he's like, y'all are oppressed. It's not right. You need to be able to worship God freely. I'm here to do that for you, to help you with that. Elisha, then, his legacy builds on top of this.
Yeah.
So Elisha is the compassionate one who demonstrated God's powerful and caring nature to all who come to him for help.
Yeah.
Right? We see that through Elisha's life. And so it's not like restarting and doing the same thing that the other person did. It's actually building on top of that and saying, I'm going to actually now show a different side of God and who he can be and who he is for you, for everyone, right, who comes to him.
Yeah, that's good.
So, all right. Real quick, this is going to lead into the next episode. The bonus point for everyone listening who's stuck with this far. Thank you guys. So there is in the story that I read at the beginning from 1 Kings 19,
Some foreshadowing.
there is a lot of foreshadowing and a lot of crazy parallels between this story of the call of Elisha from Elijah and how Jesus calls his disciples and what like all this looks like. So, that verse says that Elijah found Elisha, right? Just as Jesus, he's seen us before we even see him, like he found us before we were even looking for him. It says that Elisha was plowing with 12 teams of oxen and that obviously there's 12 disciples, right? That represents an order and a structure, right? There's an order to do things. But also that Elisha was plowing last. And Jesus said the last shall be first, right? He's putting himself behind everything, saying it's like a wolf pack kind of mentality, right? A wolf pack when shout out to Levi Lusko for telling me all this. A wolf pack when they travel, they put the weaker ones up front to lead and the strong ones at the back because they don't want to leave the weak ones behind, right? So Elisha understands this and he's like, I'm going to be at the back to actually make sure that everyone else is being pushed forward. Exactly. Good. So then Elijah throws his cloak across Elisha, right? This is the choosing process. This is the anointing process. This is Jesus choosing us and going up to these disciples and saying, hey, come follow me, right? I'm choosing you. And here's the thing. And Jesus kind of just walked away probably. Maybe they had a little bit of a conversation, but he basically was saying this is a choice. Elisha had every right to be like, nah, like I don't want to follow this way, right? Because God said, yes, anoint him, but it's ultimately up to us if we choose to follow him. Yeah. Just as Jesus said, hey, follow me. And maybe there's points, I mean, I don't want to like add it into scripture, but maybe there were times where Jesus called somebody and they were like, I don't know. What?
I'm sorry. I'm thinking on that. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, if he called someone, but I'm just going to be real and kind of disagree because
that's fine.
If the Lord Almighty, Jesus Christ, if he came right now in the flesh and called my name and was like, stop acting a fool with all of this, you know dang well I drop everything.
Yeah.
But that's because Jesus is in the flesh.
Right.
So like it was kind of hold on, I'm sorry, bro. It was kind of one of my points from back then that I was making when all the mics were not being recorded, that like some people being called to ministry or being called to this by this I mean following God and for his purpose in your life, it should scare people.
Yeah.
And
absolutely it should.
I better be scared.
I remember
in a good way.
I remember asking I usually ask my dad a lot of these questions, but I remember asking my dad and I was like, why is it that the Bible doesn't show or tell you why the disciples were just so easily like ready to just do it? Like we exalt them in the sense that they were able to be that person to say, oh, here I am, like, just take me. But that's not really the case. Like, and then we also talked about, oh, maybe they knew Jesus before he came to them and talked to them. Like, yeah, that could be a possibility.
Yeah.
But like the fact that my dad put it into perspective for me, he was like, well, son, do you feel that you have a call to ministry? And I was like, well, I struggle with it. Yes, I do, but I also feel I'm scared about it because like it freaks me out because there's a lot of sacrifices that I see that have to be made within going to ministry. And then for the disciples, I was like, but how is it that the disciples were able to just so right away just like jump off their boats and just follow Jesus? I mean, some hobo is coming to the shore yelling at some fishermen, hey, put down your nets, come follow
I'm
me.
gonna make you fishers of men.
I'm thinking to myself, these guys know that their livelihood depends on catching fish.
Right.
You're gonna put your nets down. You're gonna stop your job so that you can just go follow some guy.
Oh, don't you dare start talking about that.
No. I'm being serious. But like, but my dad's.
You
But
better throw away that net, no.
but see,
tell me
here's,
that, bro.
but see, here's the thing: is that Jesus was in the flesh in
Right.
front of them. So when he called them out, I'm sure there was something spiritually
yeah, going on within them.
within them
Yeah.
that they were like,
I'm like, okay.
all right, like that's just I gotta do it,
Yeah.
you know. And that was one of the things that was hard for me to understand, because it was like, well, the disciples were just so ready to do it. He was like, well, Jesus was in the flesh. He called them out. That's like me calling you to go take out the trash. And I'm like, oh, I see what you did, Dad. But like, if my dad, but he put that in perspective. He was like, if my dad wasn't there and my dad would just send me a text,
May not do it right away.
I'm not going to do it right away.
Yeah.
Whereas my dad was in the flesh and told me to take out the
Yeah.
trash and follow those orders, I did.
Hmm.
So like, but that's where it's like Jesus is fully God, fully human. So that experience in itself for the disciples is like beyond incredible.
Yeah.
Can I
Go
repeat
ahead.
that?
Go ahead.
No, fine, I repeat that. No, I think what Noah brought up is a good question. And at first I was like, nah, Jesus knew. But it's a good question because I get what you're saying. But I think there had to be a lot of faith within their part. And I think it's kind of like what they heard about Jesus, because Jesus was like always in synagogues and teaching well. But I don't think he had performed a miracle really yet.
Not publicly.
Publicly, at least, you know? So, like, it's not like they heard about his miracles. They just heard about his nice teachings and all that. So, it's not like, to me, I don't think they just saw Jesus like, yep, that's God. Because there's many times where Jesus had to, like, explain to them, like, yo, I'm God. And they were like, they weren't getting it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, I think it took a lot of faith from their part, because everybody, I think it was just a simple fact that they were chosen by somebody. I think it was, if that's what made them feel special, because it's kind of like what Martin told us. It's like back then the rabbis would choose people, and if you didn't get chosen at an early age, then you would go do a job.
Yeah.
And
That's what they were.
And it's like they were just doing a job because they didn't get chosen. But the fact that comes this man and says, you know what, I choose you.
Yeah.
It kind of like, whoa.
Like, hold up.
Hold
I got
up.
rejected by all these other people.
Yeah,
and
you're choosing
saying,
me. You're saying I'm fishing out here, but you choosing me. That hits hard. And I think that's how we all can come. Well, that's how I came to Christ, because like when he hit me, I'm like, yo, you love me? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
This is crazy. And I think that's where I kind of like see both points now. I'm like, all right, I see that too, but I also see what you're saying about like,
Yeah, I'm not like adding to the Bible or saying that happened, because I totally understand what you're saying too. But it's a question of like, we deal with that now more so than they did back then, because I ignored the call when I first got called into ministry. And I mean,
the analogy he brought up about the text and all that was good.
Right. And it's the same kind of thing where God calls you and he's like, hey, like, you should be doing this. You should come follow me and be a pastor, is what that call was for me.
Yep.
And I ignored it. And like, is there a part of me that kind of wishes like, oh, I wish I would have just gone? Yes. But also, there's also part of me that's so grateful that I didn't go, because I would be completely different as a leader and pastor than I am going to be now. I would have been doing it out of a selfish, ambitious way and trying to be like, oh, I would have made it about me, is what it would have come down to. My legacy would have been about me. I would have been like Saul.
My bad. I'm kind of blanked out.
You're good.
He would have gone to Bible college?
Well, yeah, I would have gone
He
to,
answered the call.
yeah.
Oh, that's the
I
college,
think,
yeah.
and it really dawned on me that it was like, because I had just started, my master's degree and all that kind of stuff. I've talked about that before, but it's just interesting how the first call for me, I ignored it, but it's also God used that to then build more of a relationship within me and with him. And I grew closer to him in that time. And so many things happened that I grew, and I'm still growing out of things that would have happened had I gone when the first call happened.
Yeah.
That was a lot of happened, but kind of
Happened.
basically what I'm trying to say is that like, I'm glad I am where I am and I didn't go, because I think I would have made that calling about me, because I've experienced that recently where it's like it's about my calling. And God's like, you're actually called to many different purposes. Like, it's not just being a pastor. That's one area of your life. So again, with all of this, it's like, there's, it's like, well, he called me. Do I follow immediately? Or like, kind of hesitant. I think we all can get there in that place.
I get it. I was in the same place, and I could get caught up in that same thing. I think we get it so twisted because we think as a calling as like, a calling, and now I got a purpose.
Right.
And it's like all calling is God calling you, and you just gotta be here I am, God.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do now? And it's like I'm gonna keep going on that what you were saying. Like if my dad called me, I don't automatically just assume like, oh yeah, okay, now I get it. It's like it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And that conversation takes time to unfold.
Yeah.
And just because that conversation takes time to unfold, so does our calling and what the purpose to our calling is.
Yeah.
So,
and that can lead, and during that time, that's over time when you might understand immediate obedience more as the more like your dad texts you or whatever.
yeah.
Right? If he continues to do it over and over and over again, you're gonna be like, all right, I'm just gonna do it. Like, I'm just gonna immediately do what he's called me to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. So, anyways, that was a tangent, but appropriate. So, going back into this, right? So, Elijah walks away. This is our choice. It says, Elisha says, first, let me do this. At first I thought this was kind of like conditional discipleship, where it's like, first, let me go back and do this, right? But as I was just looking at this now, Elisha's like, hey, hang on, like, let me go back and kiss my mother and father goodbye, and then I will come with you. And I was like, well, that's conditional, right? It's like, let me do what I want to do first. And Elijah says,
Go back.
He says, go back. What have I done to you? And to me, it hit me now where it's like Jesus did the same thing. He's like, it's not conditional. It's like, you want to go back because you want to tell people. You're like, I'm doing something new. I'm going forward. And so this is where we have the chance to, and Jesus says, yeah, go back. What have I done to you? I've changed you. I've called you. I've anointed you. I've drawn you out from the place where you were in despair like Elijah was. And I've made you new in a sense.
David went back out to the field.
Exactly. Go back.
He's all covered in olive oil.
God
And he walks out there in the field.
He's still covered. He's like,
He's like, all right, God, I'm anointed. Like,
yeah.
But to that point, man, this is a whole different podcast you
This is
just
a
brought
whole
up, bro.
thing, yeah.
Because that's so good. Because it's kind of like all of us when we get
Yeah.
promoted at work or anything, or just get a new job. We go, not even that, but we go back to our families. And we're like, yo, I just got the job, and then they're all like, oh, no, But I think in their context, like the disciples' parents and all that stuff and families were probably a little skeptical. They're like, all right, just like you have those family members who are a little hater, and you tell them like, oh, God is calling me to do this, and they're like, all right, sure, we'll see.
Yeah, or you can do it in a different way.
And then it develops, and then God does great things, and they're like, through that, it's a sermon to your life, and your calling is a sermon unraveling itself to your family members
Absolutely.
that you told.
Absolutely. And then the last little part, it says that Elisha burned everything.
just like the disciples.
It says he went.
I'm sorry, that was
Okay, hold up.
They all end up dead. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm trying.
I just, something just hit me. I'm sorry, guys. Like, we're trying to wrap up here, but there's just so much in this because Elisha says he wants to go back. Why does he want to go back? It says Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. The real reason why Elisha goes back is because he's like, I have to get rid of some things. I have to sacrifice to be fully committed to what I'm about to go into.
Sacrifice.
It requires that sacrifice. And Elisha's sacrifice led to the feeding of many. As our sacrifice to call to follow God leads to feeding of many spiritually, so did Elisha's when it says that he burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. Even then, Elisha is saying, like, this ain't about me. Like, I'm giving what I have now for you guys, and I'm going to go actually do more and do more spiritual work, as Jesus told his disciples to do. So, all right. That's it.
Anybody want to hear a joke? No.
I do.
Dad jokes. Easy, I do. All right, guys. Thank you for sticking with us through all of that and our tangents and everything. So, if you guys have reached Good Lord, my brain is just messed up. We're going to pray a prayer for salvation. Y'all help me. We're going to pray a prayer for salvation for anyone who wants to dedicate their lives to Christ, to come to him and have that new life and follow him and say, I'm going to follow him as he's called me. So I'm going to pray this. Everyone, you guys can repeat after me. Heavenly Father, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. I believe he came for me, died for me, and rose again just for me. I'm choosing to follow Jesus and make him my Lord and Savior. Today is my new beginning. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen, 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 amen. Hey, if you guys just made that decision for the first time, we are celebrating with you because you have made the best decision of your life, and we would love to hear from you. So you can send us an email. It's connection.podcast3@gmail.com. For the Trinity, that's right.
Or hit us up in those DMs on Instagram, on the stories.
All that kind of stuff.
Tag us.
Like, subscribe, comment. Leave some comments for us. Hey, if you guys have questions, let us know what we can talk about. We have some things lined up for this podcast, but we could take some time at the beginning to answer a few questions here and there.
If you have a series that you want us to do, or like a story of something.
If you want us to talk about something weird, like we were talking about weird story earlier, but like if you guys have anything you want us to talk about or questions that we can maybe answer, maybe not, we'll see.
Or if you want a segment, you guys want to see Oski bust a dance move, go ahead, do it. Tell us.
I think that should be on this one.
Yeah. Interpretive dancing with Oski.
Are there flags involved? All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you have a fantastic week. We love you all.
Peace out.